The metal brand.
Hey, Jen, can you hear us?
Metal brand.
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Well,
Can you guys hear me? Not that it matters. You don't need to hear me.
it's a word not What happens, I got off that board. They do that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good to see that. Okay,
Can you hear me, Jen?
Yes, I can.
if you wanted,
Yeah, I still can't hear you.
if you wanted to, come on.
You don't really need to hear me though, Jared.
I think what you're talking about. Well, again, I don't know what you're talking. First, the only thing, right, let's show you believe it.
That's
And then, Rory today, or Matt, I mean, a bunch of questions you had asked.
Try talking, make sure Jen can hear you too.
Questions that you can answer, you guys can answer.
Jen, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
All right.
Here too.
Cool. Is that a new toy or did you have it last meeting?
No, they took our other tabletop mic, which is more flat, so we had to use the tripod.
No, that's great. I can hear you fine.
When John starts speaking, he's going to be using a microphone in the room. So if there's any issues, let us know and we can move it closer or something.
Okay.
Thank you.
Of course.
Right?
Oh, it's 7 o'clock. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're good then.
Yeah, Rory's not gonna be.
Rory's not coming. No, Rory's not.
But
Sit right here, John. Sit right here.
Are the dogs outside?
Yes, two of them.
Yeah, you starting at 7 o'clock.
yeah, we've got quorum now too.
Are you guys all ready? We'll say the pledge.
Sure.
Good. Okay. Annie, want to lead us off?
Sure.
To the flag of the
United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, garbage is welcome. Good. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming to the April 4th meeting, the zoning advisory committee. Did everybody read the minutes from Jared? Are there any changes? Nope, and I do like to say, I do want to say that Jared does a great job with these minutes. And if you read them through, I mean, they're well written. Thank you. Who wants to make a motion to accept the minutes?
Motion.
Second, John, second it. Martin did the motion. And all approved, yes?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess from here, we're gonna go right to John Cromie and he brought the whole commission with you? No, all right, sure. No, which commission? Yeah, right there, after, pick it up.
We could turn the camera if you'd like.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
The microphone is on, Joe.
Yeah. That and that one. Yeah.
So yes, we asked Jen to.
Okay, my name is John Coney, I'm one of the members of the union. And once in a while, I saying, this is the 30th year of the historic district. So it's been around for a while. And the historic district law is managed by.
Hey guys, I don't mean to interrupt, but you should try John with the other mic.
I think you're right, Chris.
Speak to both
Sorry,
of them,
John, I
John.
didn't
That
mean to
way
interrupt.
people in this is going to the room and this is going to the Zoom.
I know, but they tend to compete.
It should be okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
keep
can-
them up. You're good.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, much better. Thank you.
All right. the Historic District Commission is composed of 5 members. Right now, we have 4 because the village board has not appointed a 5th. And of those 5 members on the commission, 2 are supposed to live within the historic district. And with us, we have Kerry Chapman, who lives in the district, and Gary Stevenson. Steve Springer, who also lives in the district, is not here. Of course, I do not live in the district. And Gary is going to be talking about the nuts and bolts of how the commission operates and what it does. And I'm going to be talking about the why there are historic districts and historic law. And in order to do that, I've got to go back to the beginnings of Anglo-American land use law. And that's the Magna Carta. Now, the Magna Carta might be 800 years old, but it's still very, very relevant because the terms of the Magna Carta are in the New York State Constitution and also in the Constitution of the United States. Now, what it was like before the Magna Carta, the king owned all the land. And the king could say who could use that land. And if he didn't like somebody, kick him out and give the use of the land to somebody else. The nobles cornered King John and changed that to say, look, okay, the king owns all the land. But if the king is going to take the use of the land away, the king or the crown had to pay the person who had it the market value or the value of that use. And you got to understand it's the whole use. Okay? And over the last 800, there was an exception. If a person was treasonous, not only could the king knock off the person's head, but the king could confiscate the land without compensation and give it to somebody else. Now, over the last 800 years, things really have not changed that much. When we had the American Revolution, the king was thrown out and the state of New York owned all of it. When the Constitution was formulated, the states shared that ownership with the federal government. Now, also the revolution, at the end of the revolution, the loyalists were sort of pushed aside. Their lands were confiscated by the state of New York, given to someone else or sold to someone else. You don't pay your land tax, same thing. The state comes in, takes the land, sells it to somebody else. So, like I said, things have not changed too much in 800 years. And the other thing that came into play is that because the state owns all the land, the state can determine what uses can be done on that land. For instance, the state of New York can say, yes, we know you own that land, but you can't take oil out of that shale. Or the state of the government can say, yes, we know you own that land, but you cannot have a raucous party at 1 o'clock in the morning on that land. They're the same thing. The state is restricting the uses of land. And now go to the later 19th century. And we had a situation, this is a gross example, but somebody built a very nice house and put a lot of money in their house. The next door neighbor built a pig rendering plant. And what happened, that neighbor who built the pig rendering plant sucked all the value out of that house of his neighbor. And that made people very unhappy. And the government stepped in and said, okay, we'll tell you what, you can have your pig rendering plants over there and your houses over there. And that was the beginning of zoning. But there was a problem about what happens if the state zoning laws or local zoning laws take away the full use of the land. And that's where the Euclid case out of the Supreme Court comes into play around the 1920s. And the Supreme Court said, yes, the government can say how land is to be used. But in doing so, it cannot take away the full value of that land, the full reasonable use of that land. So that's why the zoning boards were created, to take care of the area variances when the law said you must have 85-foot frontage and the lot only had 70. Or when there was an area that had various uses that that were perfectly fine, but for one particular property, it didn't work, either with the configuration of the property or the structures that may be on that property, and that's where the use variance comes in. So with the zoning board, it made sure that the zoning was going to be constitutional, because you gotta understand that Magna Carta is in our constitutions. And around the mid part of the 20th century, something else was going on. And that is because there were neighborhoods of a particular quality that the municipalities looked upon as being important, and especially the people thought living there thought was important. They were putting money into these properties, into the structures, and they were putting money in to maintain them. And many of these structures are difficult to maintain and expensive. So they put money in, and all of a sudden something happens to the property down the street, around the corner, or whatever, next door, and it's no longer as attractive. And that is sucking money away from that property. Which is the same concept of what happened in the late 19th century. And they went to the government, and most of these neighborhoods of the particular quality also had historic structures in them that made them more attractive to the municipalities, because it created an image for the municipalities, and also the people who were buying into it were willing to put money into these properties to maintain them and to protect those investments. Historic district legislation is made. That's basically why the historic districts they exist. And ours does also. Now, our district is a little bit different than most. Most will have a particular time period in them, or what have you. Ballston Spa's history is different from that. We have a very varied history over our 200 and some years. But it's still what we have, though, is the neighborhood of houses of a particular quality. Many of them were built by factory owners or the merchants, people from the upper middle class, and they are buildings that are difficult to maintain and expensive. So there are options intermixed, but by and large, that's the quality of the neighborhood. It's also a neighborhood the village felt that it adds to the image of Ballston Spa. The master plan has seconded that. We talked about the historic district is something that's very important for the village. Also, it's looking at the possibility in the master plan of using the same type of regulations to help protect the image of downtown. And I have been given permission to say this. I have a client, owns property in the historic district, and we create a trust. And in that trust, the trustee is required to follow the standards of the Department of Interior in doing anything to the exterior of that house. That's how much that person feels they want to have invested in the house, and they want their investments to be protected in the historic district. We have people who have come in and bought houses knowing that the historic district legislation is going to be protecting their problems. That's the why. Gary, you're up for that. Okay. The nuts and bolts.
Thank you, John. So I'm mostly going to cover what the majority of our mission is with the historic district. And that is our primary responsibility is reviewing building permit applications that for buildings within the historic district. That's our major charter. So in these reviews, what we're going to do is we use established guidelines that are incorporated in the village code. There's the National Park Service preservation briefs, which give a lot of good information on how to preserve and treat these buildings properly. And we also have a set of local guidelines that we've drawn from the city of Saratoga Springs and made them Ballston spas. So those are the touchstones that we use when we evaluate and review these applications. The way we do this is that we arrange to meet in person with the applicant at their property, including any contractor or tradesperson that they have engaged to carry out the project. And this, for us, allows us to get a much better understanding of the project, but it does it. We do this in a manner that takes some of the burden away from the applicant, because if we didn't meet like this, they would have to document every aspect of their project, specifications, drawings, and that sort of thing. And that's a real burden for someone who's just trying to do a project. Okay, so we feel that this is the best way for us to accomplish that mission. So typically these discussions will bring up details and motivations that aren't in the application. The application is fairly brief. We'll discuss things like materials and alternatives that they may not have considered in their application. So we not only discuss the exact project that they've done, but try and get into the why and the wherefores of the project and come up with the best solution between us. So the goal of this all is to arrive at a project agreement between the applicant and the Historic District Commission, which is acceptable to both parties. Okay. And what I'd like to do, trying to put some meat on this, is to cover some typical examples of the sorts of conversations we would have and the sorts of things that we would ask and evaluate during a project. So, for instance, if someone wants to do an addition on a structure or do a ancillary building on their lot, one of the things we're going to do is make sure that the siding is compatible between the buildings. Okay, that the main buildings, if it has Victorian narrow siding, that the addition that's put on that house or the auxiliary building is also going to have narrow siding. If it's a colonial revival with wide siding, that would also have that. We often find that people don't necessarily appreciate the fact that there is a difference, and often, siding is siding. It's whatever you buy at Curtis or at Home Depot, so that's one thing. We'll also, on any project like this, emphasize the importance of maintaining the character of the house, and that means things like window proportions, doorways, door styles, trim elements, and things like that, so that they're compatible and don't conflict with the style of the building. Another example, we have people that are doing work with some of the historic brick, they got brick building or they got brick foundations or whatever. And people don't understand necessarily that modern mortars are deaf to old bricks. Okay. And so, this is a case where we can be a little more consultative and say, make sure when you get your mason that they know the difference and they're using the right kind of mortar for these old bricks, because they will self-destruct if you use modern mortars. So that's another example of some of the discussions that we've had. If window work is contemplated, we'll discuss alternatives for preserving the character, making sure the dividing lights are compatible, with the building and the current windows. Talk about storm windows, okay? Talk about materials, talk about the repair options, okay? So that the whole gamut is discussed there. And one of the things we'll do is, if there's providing maybe less impactful and solutions for projects, okay, and this might involve, for instance, shielding something from view, okay, that would be objectable, like a handicap ramp or something like that, which doesn't necessarily fit with the building, but if it can be shielded, fine. Okay, so we'll work with people in terms of that type of thing. We often find that people are, hey, I can't buy that whatever that I need at Home Depot. I don't see it there, so I can't, I can't use what you are saying. Okay. And we know of sources of supply. We know of people that do this kind of work. We know of tradespeople that do these things. And so we're there to help with those aspects of a project to get it on track there. So, those are some of the things that, we've run across. There's many other examples of the types of conversations that we have, but you get the gist of it. We're there to be cooperative and to work with people on their project. So once an agreement is arrived at between the Historic District Commission and the applicant, it is now going to become part of the building permit. Okay, so it goes back to the building inspector, and the building inspector takes his responsibility of monitoring and enforcing the building permit, whether it's code or whether it's the requirements that the applicant has agreed to with us. So that's pretty much the process and how we actually do business with people and how this is implemented. And so part of the thing is, where are we headed? What are we trying to do to make this even better, a better process? So one of the things is we're aiming to become more involved at the earlier stages of people's projects, okay? Letting them know that we're there, we can talk to them, meet with them informally before they make a decision that, oh boy, I need to do this, that we can talk to them about alternatives and other ideas that they may never have thought of. So that's something that we do. And the reason for doing that is so that the review process goes smoothly. People aren't set on a particular thing and, we're having to dissuade them that we're all in agreement from the beginning and we've used our resources to best advantage. We're also filling in with additional guidelines for different aspects, working on one, for instance, for new construction within the historic district, because there are some empty lots that new construction will probably happen. Other things, other facilities, parking lots and things like that where, guidance is really needed. We're also sponsoring educational talks for the benefit of the whole village. We've had one of them, which is a well-received talk on village architecture. People can learn about the different architectures in the village. As John said, there's a whole history of the village. And one of the great things about it is you can find examples throughout whole time periods. We have an upcoming session for learning how to date your house. And this is something that's not just the historic district. This is anybody in the village. Lots of people are interested in, how do I find that out? How do I find out who used to live there and how old is my house? So those are just some of the things that we're doing and the process that we go through. So thank you. Yeah, I think, John, you wanted to say.
You have questions?
Questions?
I did. How the heck did you come up with this historic district? These lines, does anybody know where these lines came from?
Yes, it's very simple. When it was created, the first portion was West High Street. So every property that fronts West High Street, and also includes the little curve on
Here.
I'm sorry, when it was set up, it was just West High Street. So every property that fronted West High Street or had anything on West High Street was included, and that includes the little arc. I think it's actually Charlton Street. I'm not quite sure what it's called. But all those properties along West High Street, and the boundaries are the boundaries of those properties. For instance, there's a little bungalow on Ballston Avenue, going the one-way portion of Ballston Avenue. That's in the historic district. It's only in the historic district because it wraps around and hits this property hits West High Street. Then, when the Rite Aid decided to come into Ballston Spa, the people in this
Rite Aid?
Rite Aid. Okay, the people on East High Street said, "Wait, we have no protection," and that's when all the properties that bordered East High Street up to Eastern Avenue, and then also Beach and Pleasant, were included in the historic district. And once again, it's the actual boundaries of the property as they go back. So I think there's one property over on that little arc that goes all the way up to the cemetery. Well, that happens to be their property line.
That leads to the second part of that. How would you enforce any kind of historic protocols or ideas on Cunningham's Laundry if they wanted to do anything?
Well, Cunningham's Laundry is a historic structure. Now, there has been some changes to that, which never came to us. Okay. It's originally an Art Deco structure, and it is a structure that speaks to the time period. The interesting thing about our historic district is that it is not a consistent architectural piece. It has pieces of architecture from 1812 to a few years, whenever the Burlingames built their house. But most all of them have a particular je ne sais quoi to it. So actually, Cunningham's, just like the county buildings, add to the village district because they add it's almost like a textbook district where you can go and look at various architectural styles. And that I can remember showing the people from Shipper, from the state, our historic district, they were looking at a cross-eyed because they're expected to see all the houses from 1820 or something like that. And I said, no, ours is a teaching district. Okay. And so all these buildings, they speak to themselves, which also means our new buildings that are going to be going up, because the lots are for sale, really ought to reflect our times, but be of a quality that matches the rest of the buildings around. So it's a very fascinating district, and I think that's part of its difference.
One way to sum it up is that the historic district is not there to preserve what's there, but to manage change, not to prevent change, but to manage the change in a way that is amenable to the people in the historic district and amenable to the village.
One more question. Can you explain the whole handicap ramp thing at the Presbyterian Church?
Funny you should ask.
Gee, you're reading our minds. How did you know that? Here's our decision. And what it was as the decision began, the church did not have any plan.
John needs to get back to a microphone.
Yeah, don't talk until you're.
This is our decision, and the church, as I said, there were no drawings or descriptions provided. And what we did is we sat down with Peter and the contractor, and they told us what they wanted to do. And it's laid out in the decision what they wanted to do. And basically our decision was.
Which was what? I'm sorry, you're talking faster than I can read. So what was what did they want to do to begin with?
They explained the proposed ramp would be accessed from a 5-foot wide concrete sidewalk commencing from the existing sidewalk leading to the church to the north side. Those, let me see. It was most of the first page is what they wanted. That listed what we understood they wanted.
But at the beginning, when you first came in, you said to me, it had to be dark, it'd be brown or dark, right? I distinctly remember that.
It says that in here.
Yes.
Okay.
But aluminum would have been a lot cheaper for us to do.
Well, it says,
You finished.
yeah, okay. And we were told
Okay,
the cost of aluminum commercial grade ramp is prohibited and would not be an option. That's what we were told. It's right in there. Yeah, but that's what we were told.
cost of an aluminum.
And once again, if you wanted to do that, you just apply for a building permit, just as we had said that if you wanted to have a lift, if you wanted to lift, fine, just apply for a building permit. We try to get a quick response to it. Okay. So the only thing that we did in this decision was say screen it, and screen it with shrubbery. It didn't have to be constant immediate screening, but they could grow into each other about 3 foot high or something like that. That would be easy to maintain.
So
That's it.
basically, they can build whatever kind of ramp they want as long as they screen it. Is that
That's what
correct?
this was basically boiling. We did, but we said
Okay,
you
'cause
build
I
the ramp.
misunderstood
You
that
build
a lot.
you build the ramp you wanted. That's what we actually wanted.
John, you said it had to be brown, had to be brown.
We
A lot cheaper for us.
I'm sorry.
The Lincoln was a lot cheaper.
We were told just the opposite.
Excuse me?
We were told just the opposite. That's what was in the decision.
Well, maybe in Jim Coyne's.
Maybe I don't know, but we were told the opposite.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we didn't even think it was an option. Okay.
So as you know, we couldn't go through with it because it was just too expensive for us to do.
Yeah,
Look at the other churches around, they all have aluminum.
yeah, well,
What you're saying now, so if we just come back and say we want aluminum?
Yep.
yeah, because really, what we basically said is, look, we can't really prevent a handicap ramp from looking like a handicap ramp. So let's just use the shrubbery, that'll grow up and in time will screen. And that was our basic, takeaway from that.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? I have a bunch of questions. Okay.
I just have the one about Cunningham's Laundry. So if they decided to retire and sell the building, whomever moves into it, what kind of changes could they make to it? Does it have to stay historic or can they put in a quickie mart?
The historic district legislation does not deal with use.
Okay,
It only deals with aesthetics. Okay, so
so if they kept the building the same structurally,
pretty much, yes, I mean, so right now it's actually, it's also a Arctic nature, which we didn't know anything about, it just happened. And, yeah, it's just as long as it sort of is honest to itself, that's fine.
thank you.
Okay, so I got it.
I just want to try to summarize, and thanks, this is enlightening and a lot of information I appreciate, but I just wanted to see if I could distill some, especially Gary, what you were saying.
Yep.
about How you work. Is it safe to say you kind of have two hats, one as a review and approval body and another as a consultant for a property owner?
That is written into the code for us to do those things. And we can also find historic buildings within the village and signify them individual buildings. It doesn't have to be a district or a specific one, but educational and consultative is part of it.
Yeah, that one, we've never acted in the landmark language,
Right.
and there's no real definition in the code concerning a landmark. So I think it really always says, hey, that's an important building. I think that's all it really is. There's no authority. with a
You
landmark.
wouldn't be able to pull a building into the district that's on the north side of the village.
No, but
Like
we
South
could,
Street Schools.
but what we could, as John alluded to earlier, there is the possibility of setting up another historic district for a different purpose. Maybe a commercial area or some other mill area or something like that. If you look at the city of Saratoga Springs, they have like 5 or 7 historic districts, and most larger places do that. And it makes sense because you don't want to have the same aesthetic and criteria in a commercial area that you do for residential area. So, yeah. Thank you.
So I received an email from Matt, some people sent in some questions, basic ones here. First one, what makes a building historic? You guys,
Okay, well, that, you've got to go back to the idea of the zoning is to prevent people from taking value away from somebody else. Okay, so we're not dealing with a structure, we're dealing with a neighborhood. Okay, that's why you do not have historic districts in rural areas. Because what somebody does to their property isn't going to affect somebody else's value, okay? So we're not talking about, there are many historic structures in Ballston. My house is a historic structure, I think it is, okay? But it will never be in a historic district because the nature of my neighborhood in Bath Street will, hey, I bought into this, I know there was a factory right across the street, okay? It's not like I'm putting money in and then I'm going to be threatened by anybody. Okay, so that type of area is never going to be within a historic district. And the term historic really comes out of the beginnings of the historic district legislation in the 1960s and 70s, where it was generally neighborhoods of a particular time period or something like that. And it's just stayed. So the factory, for instance, a beautiful historic building, but that too would never be in a historic district. It's on the National Register, it's protected that way, but it's not going to be in a historic district.
that was the next question, says, why are many of the other historic buildings in the village ignored? excluded on the red line map, like the north end is completely ignored in the map, and why is? So let me, like. you
Yeah,
just-
that's an example of where
You
the,
get the chocolate factory, right, you get Village Hall, for 99 mil, 104 mil, most of Front Street is.
Yep.
So, I guess you're saying is. we
That-
have to
that
bring
could be.
something different.
Yep.
than This other historic.
Yeah,
That's
well,
correct.
Those areas could be a historic district if the village board wants it. The front street, Milton Avenue, because there you do have properties that are, one property owner can affect the value of the other property owner definitely. Now, with the north end of town, it could be two, but then but you're also looking at, okay, do the owners in those particular areas really want a historic district? Do they want that? Is the amount of money that they're putting into their home such that they want to have that money protected? And from the neighbor, they'll probably look at you and say, no. You know, they don't want necessarily that type of protection for their investments. Because their investment doesn't, in that type of home, may not need it, but then again, there might be another area in the village, up in the north end of town or wherever else, where the people are saying, look, we want that protection. That's different. It's gotta come really from the
Board
board.
would have to create something different.
Um,
The board would have to create something.
yes,
It would have to be the village board.
Just got a couple more here. It says, what are the specific criteria for the Historic District Commission uses in its interpretations? And where is that information documented?
okay. So, it's mainly in the, guidelines, which are posted on the village website under the historic district. There's a whole set of guidelines. Perfect. You got it. That's right.
So let me ask this. I got this to our church. Did the planning and zoning get this? I don't remember ever seeing this thing. And I think I
I
should.
think we sent courtesy copies to the planning board.
They got it electronically, but I don't know if the members of each board.
I received it from my church, and then you gave me one.
Well, that's because the
We mailed it
church
to
is a property owner, right? But in terms of the rest of the community, they got it through public notification on the village website. Jennifer posted everything on, and then they made.
There was a
us an
mailing.
email.
There was an actual physical mailing that went out with village news and such that announced the availability of it.
The village newsletter.
Yeah.
This is what they're supposed to be using as a criteria.
Yes. When we evaluate a project, we're going to be evaluating it against those guidelines. That's the best way of saying it.
So if somebody started putting in new windows, you have to get a building permit?
Yes,
Okay.
and that's from the building inspectors.
So like you're saying that. So they.
Visible from the street.
Okay, you're right.
If they do something in the back of the building,
No jurisdiction.
we're not.
You
concerned.
addressed already my question about West High and Boston Ave, because there will be new construction.
Yes,
So you're saying you're gonna, so these new people that are buying this gonna have to know they have to see you before they build that,
correct.
correct?
Well, they're gonna have to, yes, before they build anything, because they're gonna have to do a building permit. And then we're gonna review the building permit, so they can't do anything until it's approved.
Criteria.
That, and if you look at the village code, actually, there's a lot of information in there about new buildings in the historic district. And what we're doing is I'm drawing on that information from other historic districts and creating a guideline similar to the ones in there for new construction. That's the goal, and we're partway through that.
And then last question says, this is not for me, is what are the qualifications someone needs to serve on the HBC? Any special requirements, education, experience, or degrees? So if somebody wants to join your committee, do they need?
They
There-
need to be a resident of Ballston Spa and breathing. Preferably over the age of 18. So, no, the only requirement is that there are two members that must reside in the, historic district. Okay. That comes out of the point of the time when the historic district was small. It was only on West High Street. It could be expanded because now we've got a lot more people living in the historic district than it was when that was written. But by and large, it's any resident who presumably over the age of 18.
And has the
More
interest
criteria.
to participate and
Seems to
learn.
me like there should be more criteria if you're putting such stringent, rules and regulations on people.
I
So some
that
Joe
you-
Schmo can come in and just say, I wanna be in the historic district, and they have no knowledge of anything?
Yeah,
that makes no sense.
Well, that-
has happened.
Yeah, it has happened.
And I tend to agree with you. There should be some type of, some historic district legislations, you have to have someone who has a historic background, somebody who's got an engineering background,
Right,
somebody with
that's-
architectural background, something like
Exactly.
that. We didn't do that because it was just, 40 years ago, it was, the thing, and there were, the major changes that had to be made to that legislation.
So what do your members have for experience?
Well,
What
Karen,
what are your criteria?
um,
Hear that?
you've lived in this neighborhood all your life.
Pardon?
You've lived in the neighborhood all your life.
I go on and off from do I worked in fashion, so I have really good taste. but anyways. And then moved back to East High Street, partly because it's a historic. I mean, should can't grow and there's the cover and like control being a source for do our own. We do a lot of
Yeah.
projects.
Okay,
I think it's most important that
Yeah.
the people that are on the historic district have a passion for the architecture, the history of the village, and that sort of thing. We have plenty of guidelines to go by in terms of understanding what's good, what's bad, okay? If you look at the national park guidelines, they are very, very thorough, more thorough than we would probably need, okay? And to me, that's the most important thing. Now, personally, we have a house in the historic district, put a lot of effort, time into it. We've been here since the 80s, 70s,
40 years.
40 years. And, I'm a craftsman. I do woodworking and stuff. So I have the appreciation for what can be done, what should be done with the house and what's appropriate. Okay. I'm a lifetime subscriber to the Old House Journal. Okay. Which is the source really initially when this whole movement started to restore houses and such in Brooklyn with the brownstones. And it was a grassroots, everybody learning from everybody else in terms of how to do this fix, how to do that. Watch out for this, watch out for that. I have every single issue since 1973.
I think with
You
the
know.
guidelines, it's not as much up to individual interpretation or individual taste as you would think that it is. It's laid out, we don't have, I'll tell you what I think about the color of your house if you ask me, but that's certainly not something that's included. So I think a lot of it is having an interest in and having an interpretation of the guidelines that have been set up. It's not, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not, I think your stairs are ugly. These are historically in a mid-century home, this is what would be appropriate. Historically in a Victorian home, this is what would be appropriate. I got a guy who can do newel posts, if you'd like his number. More as Jared was saying, as a consulting thing. So there's the sort of recommendation versus the requirement piece. And the idea is that we can either as a resource and not just, it's meant to be a friendly neighbor thing, really. Steve's got a guy for everything. He does.
Steve does have.
He's got a guy or a lady.
Our other member is Steve Springer, who is a developer, primarily of commercial structures now, and also has a company that stretches the one end of the country to the other. But he has an awful lot of contacts, an awful lot of knowledge, and I think he could say he's made a lot of mistakes on his house and would like to pass on to others not to do.
Not only does he have a business for reproducing moldings, historic moldings from this area He's got thousands of moldings that he can produce. So if we run across someone that's trying to match a molding on a house or put something appropriate, we know where to go. Okay, so that's how we help people.
I think it's an exaggeration to say he has a business. He's trying to figure out how to make money out of it. His whole
Yeah.
purpose was to take, I don't know if you knew Doug Holger, but he had tons and tons of moldings over his lifetime. And after he died, Steve purchased them so they would not get dispersed. And he's now setting it up so that people can have moldings made from those knives.
A true interest.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a true interest that this is a good place to maybe put our true interests. Thank you.
Clarify that you deal just with the outside of the house that you can see. I think. Of course, what you put in your backyard, so that's it. But I think, what you're describing, is very valuable thing, not only people in the historic district, but, you drive around this village.
Hey, guys, I don't mean to interrupt, but the people in the audience can't be heard, so it might be helpful if you guys at the mic repeat their questions so we know what you're answering.
Sure. Okay,
I think they're a really good resource because what's 80% of this village I would consider historic. I don't know the exact percentage, but if you look at the map, the newest end of the village is Colonial Hills, and then there's some pockets of neighborhoods. And no, I just want to say that I think they're a valuable resource for anybody in an older home. So.
Public comment. All right, anybody else? Okay. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
good.
Okay, so on your grammar. She said that there's gonna be a meeting, a public meeting in May, sometime in May, right?
Yes.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Okay, so that's what we were told last month, and I had, started a stakeholder list. I'll just start passing that out to the ZAC. Pass that down. People that we may want to start thinking about inviting to this meeting. But before that, we got to figure out what the date of the meeting is. And I suggested to Peter that, we have this room in May for 2 nights, May 2nd and May 16th. Now, I know the consultant is not with us tonight, but we should touch base with Matt and the consultant and try to book the consultant's public stakeholder meeting for one of those dates. And I would advocate May 16th might be the better date, as long as there's not a big conflict with any village-wide event happening that night. Because if we keep a meeting in June instead of May, we probably will lose the public interaction. I think people are just going to be tied up with graduations, school events, vacations, and things like that. It is on the schedule.
All right, so this press release, we're gonna have everybody look at it,
So the next thing was, months ago, I had offered to do the press releases for the SAC as I had done for the comprehensive plan. So this is the same format for a draft press release for the stakeholder meeting as I did last time. And if you have any comments for either things you want to see in the press release or things you want to see as new stakeholders on the list, let me know and I'll edit it. Then I'll run it by Matt and Jennifer so that the village can, the started the
You
process.
want me to scan them and send them to Matt, or do you want to do that?
Send those to.
So you'll scan them both in, send them to Matt, and then,
So does anybody, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the stakeholder list. This was the original list I gave to Matt several weeks ago for the interview schedule. Did not go over very well. And if you have other people that need to be on this list, other nonprofits, other representatives of the community, you know, just let me know and I'll add them to the list. And again, I said to Peter, I don't know what the consultant has in mind for this public community meeting. He never really described the format for interacting with the public, so I'm assuming he has some sort of a program or some way to, you know, get people to talk about what they want to see on the zoning. And whatever that is, I don't know if it's receptive to having a Zoom format, but we did have that the last time for the comprehensive plan community meeting, so.
okay, any questions on this here? Anybody? No, we're supposed to break up, but it's only like,
Do we want to, should we make a motion to set that date for the public workshop?
Well, we
Or do we
can't
need
yet.
to?
because we don't know exactly which day Chris can do it,
Yeah,
Fisher Associates.
just 16th should give us more time to publicize this if we can. I don't know what day, yeah, and to date. And before we move to the breakout sessions, really need to talk about the interview schedule. If anybody here is gonna have lunch.
Okay, so
Next
some people already replied to that, right?
Okay.
Yes. So I guess if any of us here are gonna have lunch or wanna meet with Chris, we have to email Matt. And I guess Matt's gonna have to get back to us what slots, if, you know, if you wanna meet with the Fisher Associates with Chris. But he's already sent some emails out about it, right? To put everything on there.
Yes. Because in months will have replied, subject emails.
So if they haven't replied, I presume they're not gonna go. I mean,
Yeah, I don't know. And then the tour, John is gonna give the tour starting at 1 o'clock that day.
There.
Well, we will start from the library basement at 1 o'clock. I offered to assist him. And anybody from the ZAC that wants to go on that tour, be at the library, be there for
but
1 o'clock.
who else is gonna be there? I think the mayor's gonna be there, right?
I don't,
It's just, there's three,
okay.
yeah, there's a whole group of people that are gonna be there.
Just do like we did last time, jump in cars and travel around. And then the only other thing would be the evening of April 10th. Was a proposal to meet here with the consultant, because that will be the first time the SAC will be physically available to meet the consultant.
And I don't think we nailed that down.
Yeah, I don't
Again,
think we did.
we don't have enough,
It's not nailed.
enough people
Just
comment.
encourage anybody show up.
Maybe Matt can send another email out.
There's several, but I don't, not everybody replied.
We don't know if we're gonna do it on the 10th or the 17th, right?
18th.
The 18th. the 10th,
Yeah,
or
because the 10th is a Wednesday, it's a
Okay.
Thursday.
So, because he's the.
Right, right.
Same. Day or work.
Next Wednesday.
Yeah.
And thanks for the chance as a staff to meet with the consultant that,
Well, if we have a planning meeting, that'd be difficult for a bunch of us, we worry anyway, because 10th is Wednesday, is that right?
yeah, it's not a planning meeting.
No, 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 no.
A planning board.
Planning board meeting, a planning board meeting.
It's a planning.
Well, I don't know if there's a meeting yet. I haven't gotten any notification that there were, but that'd be difficult for us.
Eric and Cameron, myself. Government, somebody make.
The 10th,
Send with the
evening,
yeah,
do it,
and then
okay.
we're unsure,
Yes, I'm unsure, right?
unsure, and we'll go about.
And if there's a planning board meeting, we won't be here either. So I guess Matt will have to decide.
So we would have four.
Yes, you would.
Yes.
Was there anything else on new business anybody want to talk about?
So,
Anything else?
so we do still need to resolve next week via email then.
Yes. Should we just do public comment? We're not gonna, those two last articles are nothing to.
Which are
There's just 14, 15 is what. I looked at them today. All right, so let's take a couple minutes, just do the public comment now, and then. Sorry, any public comment? Yes, I see that there's not one scheduled right now, but again, very close to last minute meeting, or
There's a.
Do have a lot of places of worship. And of course, I don't know what person, but that come from village versus instead of village. But it's still, they take a lot of real estate and, you know.
I can't hear people that aren't anywhere near the mic.
that wasn't too good. Oh, we lost, sorry.
Yes.
You all right?
Hello.
Oh, yeah.
Fancy mic. I was just looking at the stakeholder list. And I was thinking places of worship could be a important stakeholders. Again, I don't know what percentage of the people who go to these places live in the village, but they do take up a lot of real estate, and it's an important aspect of the village. Sort of same thing with BACC, is just a place where families go, but again, a lot of them are from outside the village. But the other, I think, important group that's not on here exactly, it's just homeowners. I know it's a big group, but homeowners. Somehow they should be represented with whatever we do here, I think. Thank you.
Thanks.
So I don't think it would have really time to split up to do those two last chapters. And there really wasn't much to them, no? So anybody want to make a motion to adjourn? Marilyn, anybody second it? Second, aye. Everybody say in favor? Aye. So, thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Jen.
Thanks, Jen.
Good night, guys.
Good night.